know the ego wants things fast. The ego wants to know, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And she keeps asking you these questions. But there's no need for that once the ego truly remembers who she is. Welcome to Self-Mastery School for Moms, where you learn how to silence your inner saboteur, awaken your energy body, and connect to your higher self. You will go from mom to master, so you can make each day your masterpiece. My name is Janice Nelson, author and self-mastery teacher of Fabulous One Philosophy. I'm on a mission to help you become the awakened mom. You are Fabulous One, and all you have to do is remember what you forgot. When we speak about concepts, we need to understand them. They sound catchy, they sound very seductive. But if we don't truly understand the technology behind it, then it becomes practically impossible. It becomes a fantasy. It becomes a nice idea, but very, very hard to execute. From the start, quantum leap is something very metaphysical, very mysterious. So what is it that's going to happen when you quantum leap? And this is the best example that I can give you that is going to put it in perspective. You don't quantum leap one time. We live in an infinite universe. There are a few reoccurring themes that I'm going to keep repeating to you over and over. The first one is enlightenment is not the end, but where we start. I'm going to repeat this over and over and over and over in my videos because I am convinced we are born enlightened and then we fall asleep. So the name of the game is not becoming enlightened. The name of the game is remembering that you always were. So it's not about becoming fabulous. It's about you remembering you've always been fabulous. You are fabulous. And so I'm going to spend the rest of my natural life trying to convince you of this fact. Trying to convince you of the fact that you are. There's nothing you have to become. The becoming part is the part of the ego. And the ego wants to become the soul. But first the ego has to surrender to the fact that she will never be the soul. Because the soul is infinity. But then the ego has to remember she is the soul. She has willingly put herself in this position. The soul has willingly put herself in the position of the ego. But the ego has her own consciousness, her own level of awareness. And now it's the ego who has to go through trial and error to constantly move towards the soul. And so that's what it's about. But this game is going to be full of suffering. This journey is going to be full of suffering if the ego thinks that she actually has to become the soul. Because then the ego will judge herself for where she is today. Then the ego will say to herself, I'm not good enough because I'm trying to reach my soul. And mind you, if the ego turns inwards and moves towards her soul, that's already next level. That's already a quantum leap. Because first and foremost, our ego is focused on the outside world. Our ego is focused on what we want to have, not who we want to become. Our ego wants a certain end result because that's all she learned her whole life. Is what it is that she wants to have. So she's not even thinking about who she wants to become. That's phase 2, the big awakening. So phase 1, the small awakening, the ego has to turn inwards and go after her soul. So it's still duality, it's still becoming. Because instead of the ego trying to go after stuff, instead of the ego trying to get an end result, instead of the ego chasing the pot of gold, The ego now realizes, oh, wait a minute, I am the rainbow. Because when I become the rainbow, the pot of gold appears anywhere I want it to appear. So when the ego all of a sudden starts chasing her soul, the ego changes in level of awareness. The ego goes inwards, but you're still stuck in duality. So the ego becomes a spirit ego, and with all consequences. But that's another video. So when you make a quantum leap, you go from the ego always looking on the outside, and now you're becoming the ego that is looking on the inside. But to your environment, it will feel like a day and night difference. And they're going to start pulling at you because they feel you moving away on an energetic level, because you're no longer invested in the outside world. You're now following the light of your soul. You're not there yet. It's a step you took. It's a really, really good step. It's a great step. But you're following your ego's lead now. And that process is like the butterfly process, the transformation of the butterfly. It's a slow process. And I know the ego wants things fast. The ego wants to know, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And she keeps asking you these questions. But there's no need for that once the ego truly remembers who she is, that she is the soul. So when the ego turns inwards, the journey is still full of suffering, because the ego wants to become the soul, becoming the higher self, right? Becoming your true self, meaning I am not my true self yet. Becoming the authentic self, meaning I'm not my authentic self yet. So even though you now consciously choosing the spiritual path, your spiritual path is still full of suffering, because the ego still believes she's becoming someone. The third phase, phase 3, which is the awakened state, is when the ego realizes she is the soul. When the ego remembers that she has willingly put herself in this position. So in the beginning you might get a little angry. What? Who in their right mind would put herself in this position, right? That's also a video. That's also another video. Because it has to do with infinity. And if you can be anything and everything in this world, and everything is already invented and created by source energy, wouldn't you want to forget and start over again? But that's a whole nother video. But quantum leaping literally means that you give yourself permission to be who you are. And then from that position, you move up to higher levels of consciousness. You give yourself permission to change. And that's really hard for us. It's hard to give ourselves permission to change, because we don't know what person is on the other side. We don't know who we're going to find. We don't know who we're going to become, right? That's the fear of the ego. But the ego needs to let go and allow herself to be. And once you give yourself permission to be who you are, once you understand you are already fabulous just the way you are, now you're going to really speak up. Now you're going to speak your truth. Now you're going to say what's on your mind. Truly. You're not going to hold back. You're going to be nice about it, even though we don't like to say the word nice, right? You're going to be kind, compassionate, and all of the above. But your words are now going to be very clear. And you're also going to have a lot less patience with people who do not respect your journey. Because at the end of the day, everybody is on their journey. Everybody is taking the road back home. And we have to respect that people are doing the journey in their own time, at their own pace. at their own speed, right? Their level of awareness will evolve depending on their willingness to move forward. I can have no judgment upon that. What my soul mission should be is focus on my own progress and make those quantum leaps by giving myself permission to be, by giving myself permission to change. And that's where it starts. If you want to quantum leap, you're going to change. So you need to give yourself that permission to change. And once you make that quantum leap, it will be obvious because you will have changed. And people will point it out. They can't put a finger on it. Did you change your hair? Did you lose some weight? What type of facial are you using? You're glowing more than usual, right? People will know, but they won't be able to put their finger on it. Because if it's that easy to deduce, everybody would be able to do it. But it's that permission. It's that permission that you need. And most of us, especially as women, we don't give ourselves permission to change. And you might do it one time, but I'm already here to tell you, enlightenment is not the end, it's where we start. So once you have a big change, a big transformation, I already want you to know there's more coming. This never ends. So it's about making this journey one quantum leap after the other. And so now literally every year you're going to change into a new person. And whoever is in your surrounding, in your environment, will have to keep up. And as soon as you stop giving yourself permission to change to the next one, that's when you stop growing. That's when you can become unconscious again. So the hardest part for all of us, including myself, and this took me a long time to figure out, the hardest part is not changing one time. The hardest part is always detaching, is changing all the time. That's the hardest part. When you realize you're not allowed to sit still and you have to keep changing. Because at a certain point in your life, especially when we are 30 plus, 40 plus, we get comfortable. So what is really, really hard is that our inner saboteur, our unconscious mind, will start telling us it's okay to stand still, it's okay to take a rest, it's okay to no longer move forward. But the only reason why you would believe that is if you truly believe in your heart that you are not there yet. So what is the most important thing that you need to reach? Is the fact that you need to believe you are already there, even if there's no physical proof. Because whatever is happening in your 3D reality has nothing to do with your infinite self. Your 3D reality, your 3D self, your physical self can change. Because it's subjected not just to your own thoughts, but you're subjected to the thoughts of everybody else's. You are dependent upon what happens in this world. The world economy is real. So you have no control over the world. And so to a certain extent, you don't have any control over what changes in your 3D reality. But what you do have control over is your own mind and body. And the moment you stop giving yourself permission is where you feel the resistance the most. It's the moment you stop changing is when you reintroduce suffering back into your world. So if you want to truly quantum leap, you got to give yourself permission, first of all, to detach from the whole world And second, you got to give yourself permission to move to a higher level of consciousness, even if that means that the people in your current environment don't want to move with you. And that's the hardest thing once you've already established a certain type of lifestyle. When we're young and we're 18, it's easy to change. But in our 30s, when we're married, when we have children, it becomes harder and harder and harder. And so the good news is that this type of transformation happens in the mind. So there's nowhere you need to go. There's nowhere you need to travel towards. This is not going to take any extra time out of your day. You don't need to take days off in order to find yourself. You need to be willing to do the work at home.